I think giving to gain means that if you give something of yourself, then not only do other people gain, but you actually gain as well. And I certainly feel that when I've given of myself, then I've benefited from that. So just some recent examples are I spent some time with the school children from St. Nicholas talking about my job and how I'd got to where I am, my career path. And it was just absolutely great to be able to encourage them because a lot of them were sitting there sort of saying, yeah, but we're never going to do that. And, how did you know you're a leader? And I could say to them, yeah, but how many of you are leading a captain of a sports team or you're a monitor at school or something? That's all about leadership and they're just the same skills. And you could see that they were just like, oh, I never really thought of that. So that was absolutely brilliant to be able to give them a bit of encouragement. I think it's about being more understanding. And I'm not decrying any of the men in this organization. We've got fabulous colleagues of both genders. But in reality, in the main in society, the burden of care and household chores does still fall to women in the majority of households, whether that's care of children or care of older people. And I think it's just understanding that and that all of us are juggling multiple aspects of our lives, but actually your female colleagues or your mums or your sisters or your aunts are probably juggling a little bit more than some of the guys maybe is experiencing. So just to have that understanding and all of us between us recognize that and where possible support each other through those difficult times, those complex decisions that people have to make when they are trying to juggle and balance all those things. When I worked at Riverside, I set up a program there called Reverse Mentoring, which is quite often mentoring programs are about someone senior and quite often older, kind of giving their wisdom to younger people. But our reverse mentoring was very much about people who had different experiences than us actually sharing their experiences with us. So I was mentored by a younger member of staff, and it was just really great listening to her talking about what her experiences and challenges were as a young person, which were very different than mine had been at that age. So, there's like a 20-year gap and it's a different world. So it helped me understand the world that many of our tenants were facing, many of my colleagues were facing, the challenges, particularly around social media, particularly around getting onto the career ladder, and the pressures for many of them on trying to get on into a home independently, whether that was private rented or buying, which were very different than my experience. So I learned a lot from that. But that was set up to be a reverse mentoring scheme, a scheme where I've actually learned from people I'm mentoring myself. Certainly with HDN, I've had quite a number of female mentees, and I've always found that there's quite a common thread of people lacking confidence and being a bit concerned about taking decisions. So it's been great to be able to help them through that process. And also, but then just like the joy and the pride you get when they succeed in going for a role that maybe I've done some interview practices with them for or something. But probably the best example is one of my HDN mentees from, it was a woman who worked at an association in Manchester. And she spent a lot of time talking with me about being a Black woman and her experiences in the workplace and in society generally. And I learned a massive amount about what racism is like on a daily basis, how that impacts you, impacts your confidence, your aspirations, how it impacts your family. And, she would recommend reading for me. And one of the books that I read was Why I No Longer Speak to White People About Racism. And that really brought home to me the kind of the effort that Black people have to put into trying to explain what it's like to experience racism to us and how unheard they feel quite often, to the point where you just think, why would I put all this energy into this? I'm just gonna give up. So I learned a massive amount from her about what that feels like to be a Black woman.